All right, thanks everyone for joining us for the March 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Missisquoi Basin Water Quality Council. We appreciate you all being here. As Dean alluded to, a couple of us were in a very similar meeting less than half an hour ago for the Missisquoi Basin. And so I think we learned some good advice and tips to maybe make this one go a little bit more smoothly and to stay within time. We did go over at that last meeting and had to schedule another meeting. And so I think today if we can try to stay really focused, it'd be great to just do it all in one meeting. I don't know about you, but I have enough meetings. I will, so we can do a quick round of introductions as we usually do per our protocol. I will pick on you. So Lauren Weston, Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District, voting member, chair, she, her pronouns. Dan.
I'm Dan Seeley from Richford Representative.
Thank you. Sarah. Oops, Sarah, you are muted.
Sarah Downs, Enosburg Representative.
Thank you. Beth.
Beth Torpy, NVDA, voting member, she, her.
David. Oh, we can't hear you again. Oh no. I couldn't hear him. I don't know if anybody else could. Okay. I'm sorry, Dave. We can't hear you. If you want to put it in the chat, I'll read it out loud. Lindsay.
Lindsay White, Missisquoi River Basin Association, voting member, she, her.
Awesome. Alaire.
I'm Alaire Diamond from Vermont Land Trust, and I'm a voting member, and I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you. Barry.
Barry Lemke, Northwest Regional Planning Commission, he, him, voting member.
Yeah. I'll say it. Dave just posted in the chat. David Allerton, Town of St. Albans, alternate. Thank you, David. Kent.
Ken Henderson, Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, voting member.
Thank you. Tom.
Tom Rizzleton, Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, alternate.
Ted.
Ted Siddell, Orleans County, NRCD, voting member, he, him.
Thank you. Jim.
Jim Pease, retired Vermont EC. I may be representing the Lamoille County NRCD at some point in the future.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Jim. Kent, Otter AI.
Let me get that out of there. I didn't know that
Okay.
that would sign on.
Gotcha. Not a problem. I was like,
All right.
another guy named Kent. Fun. Tucker.
Tucker Malone, Vermont Land Trust, alternate, just lurking.
Sounds good. Dea.
Hi, Dea Quispa.
And Dean.
Hi, everybody. Dean Pierce with staff.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I know it gets tedious, but I think it's important, and I appreciate you all humoring me. So thank you. Yeah, really quick. This is Zoom meeting protocols. I think we're getting pretty good at them. I will say today, I think what I'll do when we go to vote is maybe ask for abstentions first, just so it's really clear who is and is not voting on certain things. So that might be a little bit different, but please do use the raise hand function or physically raise your hand. Based on the last meeting, there's a lot of conversation to be had. And yeah, definitely try to stay focused today. There's a lot of information. All right, moving on to reviewing and adjusting and approving the agenda. Thank you, Dean. The agenda is on the screen in front of you. Does anyone have any additions or changes? All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as written.
This is Lindsay. I motion to approve the agenda as written.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Second,
Thank you, Sarah. All those in favor? Please raise your hand in some way or another. Okay, I see. Sarah, Lindsay, Dan, Beth, Blair, Barry, Kent, Ted, and Lauren. Thank you. All those opposed? Seeing none. All those abstaining? Seeing none. All right. Approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Thank you, Dean. We do see that, by the way. If folks have reviewed the minutes and have any changes, please say so now. I guess, Ted, is your name written right there? It says Edwin Ted Siddell. I don't know if that's.
Yes.
Okay.
Edwin is the legal name. Ted is the family curse.
Okay. Should it be in parentheses or anything, or?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments or questions? Wonderful. Hearing none. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as written?
This is Lindsay. I will motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you.
Sarah, I second it.
Thank you. All those in favor, hands up. Sarah, Dan, Lindsay, Alaire, Beth, Barry, Ted, Lauren. All those opposed? Seeing none. All those abstaining? Was anybody not at that meeting? I guess Ted was not at that meeting, so he actually technically abstains. Sorry, Ted. All right. Thanks, everyone. Public comment not related to items on the agenda. Oof, words are tough. All right, seeing none. Thank you, Dean. We'll move on to seating of any new reps or alternates if required. Dean, I'm unaware of any, I don't know where we're at.
Yeah, I don't believe that there are any that are locked in so that we can pass this.
Thank you. And with that, I will say thank you for that portion of the event. And we are now going to join the fun part. I'll hand it over to Dean. For the public record, also, Alaire should also abstain from approving those minutes as she was also not at that meeting. Thank you, Alaire.
As Lauren mentioned, some of us have been in a meeting similar to this one. And yes, there were some lessons learned, and hopefully things will go a bit more smoothly, starting with the link working. Apologies to those who have to hear some of these things the second time. I'll try to be a little bit more effective and efficient with it. The main work of the group today is going to be to take action on lists of projects. And it seems worth mentioning some of the background on the voting process. So the rule having to do with the work that you are all doing talks about the BWIC's voting on a prioritized list or preliminary scoring that the QUISPs prepare and then rank and doing a final ranking. So that's what we're all about today is that the QUISP received the applications, we've processed them, and we've prepared an initial ranking. And the QUISP will have that opportunity to review that ranking and to tweak them. There will be two categories of projects. In other words, two lists. In the future, there might be more lists. One of the categories is applications that are for projects that are in a very early stage of development. And the second category is for projects that are in a later stage where it's either design or design and implementation or straight implementation. There's no funding of a project without the BWIC saying that that project should get funds. However, once the BWIC has said a project is eligible for funds, then it passes back into the QUISP, and we will work on the contracting and agreement signing and all of that with the party that made the application. So we want to just again, to say that there are two categories. Some things that come into play are, is there enough funding for all of the applications? Are any of the applications unreasonable in terms of how much they cost or how they perform in terms of phosphorus reduction? If there's a close pair of projects and you need to somehow determine one gets funding and one doesn't, well, then you can look at co-benefits. May or may not be the case today. And then we would be looking for motions to signal what the group is approving funding for. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was an idea that we call cost effectiveness thresholds. And this is going to be somewhat repetitive for some of you. When the QUIS were created, we've signed agreements with the Department of Environmental Conservation that set targets for us to achieve. And in our agreements, we're supposed to pursue those targets with projects that are cost effective. So we are looking to spend money wisely, in short. And the way that we are assessing cost effectiveness is how much phosphorus is reduced for $1. And that would be a way for us to compare different types of projects. Now, different types of projects have their cost estimated differently and their phosphorus estimated differently. But once we get those numbers, we can do the arithmetic and we can have a number that allows us to do some initial comparison. As I had said earlier today, the cost information is not perfect. It's not great in some cases. It's going to get better over time. We have to work with the numbers that we have. Something else I want to be clear, and it's not a bullet point here, is that when we think about cost effectiveness, we're thinking about the project as in totality. So we have to be thinking about the overall costs and how much phosphorus will be reduced overall, not just what is being done right now. So we have to look at the overall, and that means that the costs are in many cases estimates that require, best guess or a range. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we've had to do when applicants are only able to provide a range, because we can't really use a range in the calculator. DEC, we're told to do things to spend money wisely and to support projects that are cost effective. There's no hard rule right now, but there are signposts, I guess I would call them, that we can use along the way. And I'm going to share some of those right now. So we have amount of money that's been awarded to the QUIS, to the basin for projects. And that amount has been determined based on how much it would cost in theory to meet the target. So in our basin, which is basin 6, we have a big target, 145 kilograms. But because that's such a big target, the amount of money that we are receiving for projects is a big number. And if you do the arithmetic, it works out to on $11,000 or $12,000 dollars per kilogram. And that's a reference point. It's not perfect, but it's a reference point to give us something to compare projects to. But different types of projects have different costs. Some projects cost a lot and some cost less. Lauren.
Sorry, can you just go back to the other slide really quick? I just want to clarify, make sure I'm understanding. The P target in kilograms is per year and the project funds available are per year.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Yeah, it has been it's been unnecessarily cloudy at times, but it shouldn't be. That's the target per year. And that is the amount that we are eligible according to this paper that was released last year sometime. Yes, these are annual. So it's a lot of phosphorus over time. It adds up. And it's a crude measure because, like I said, not all projects are the same. Some by their very nature cost more, some cost less. And so we have to keep that in mind. It was mentioned in an earlier meeting, that a stormwater project. So here we see the cost in this, based on this database, which is an older database, is, you know, many times greater than some of the other categories. But we just have to deal with that and prioritize as best we can. So, as I said, the QUISP is told that we have to spend our money wisely and cost effectively, reduce phosphorus cost effectively. We know that there are these data points that can help us. We've also been told that first to start, no one is, that our knuckles won't be wrapped if we fund a project that seems to cost a lot and has less benefit, but we are keeping our eyes on 2 to 3 times the cost as an indication of, ooh, wow, if something costs 2 to 3 times either the 14,000 or the 11,000, whatever number it is that seems like the right number, then we're getting into a realm where maybe it's a project that costs too much. Something that will be discussed more, can be discussed more. So where we are now is to talk about the work that's been going on since the application deadline came. And I'm gonna try to do a better job this time than before. Just recap a little bit. We have that 145 kilogram target. We have the $1.6 million. There was some assumption or an element to that calculation that produced the 1.6 that said, you know, some of that money should go to early stage projects. And 7% was a number that DEC decided on. And so I just wanted to call that out. Of the 1.6 million, about 115,000, that's 7%. And that could be used or seen as an amount to apply to early stage projects. And the amount of money that was requested is relatively small. So in other words, we've got more than enough money to do the assessment and ID type projects. And later on, I'm going to be saying that we as a QUISP looked at the applications, we scored them, but our position and recommendation would be that the BWIC fund them all. We just think that it's a reasonable thing to do. The conversation gets to be more complicated when we're talking about the projects that are in the second category, but I just wanted to get that established. Now, we also have a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to make sure that the next time that this happens, everybody has all of the application materials that were submitted. You'll be able to access. You know, it's something that we don't want to dump on everybody, but we want anybody that wants to get to it to have it. And we're working on a way to do that. It was something that I was wrestling with when I was putting together the package. Where do we draw the line? Because if I sent you, 50 or 100 pages of material, how reasonable is it to expect you to review that when a lot of the decision-making comes down to things like the numbers that go in the formula? But I'm going to just do a quick little preview and show you that I'm hoping people can see still. We've created a dashboard, which is in this data platform I've mentioned before that we call Smartsheet. And this is what we're working towards. We're working towards something where an applicant files their application, they fill out a form, the information gets pulled into this dashboard, and people can see a bunch of different things. Everything from, okay, where are they located, to, well, what were the specific answers to the application question? What's the organization? What's the base? You know, this is in a sense a mock-up, but it's getting pretty close to what it is that we're trying to do. Also significant, oh, you could look at an application, you can click this, and you can see all the attachments. This is something that we're working towards. I want you to know that you will have this kind of thing. We want to be transparent. And for anybody that really felt like they were at a disadvantage not having access to all of the information in advance of this meeting, we're sorry, and we'll make sure that you have it. Although we want to make sure that the conversations are really about those things that are most significant in those applications that get to this idea of cost effectiveness and so on. The dashboard, will have dashboardy things like, and it'll be improved, but you get to see the total number of applications and how much is requested and break them down into categories and so on. And also see things like how much of the phosphorus target do the applications address. So this pie that I have on the left side here is the total pie for our 150 plus or 150 or so kilograms. And the applications that we've received are addressing 17% of it. Now, the next, and so that people will be able to see, and maybe in time, what we'll even have this go live as applications are coming in, and people will be able to see how much we're doing. But someday, this shows the information for the applications that we've received. And you see the red bar is what we are supposed to hit. The blue bar is how much is represented by the application. And this orange bar, as I described it, it's kind of an interim, it's a training wheels target that the CRISPs have so that we don't freak out by not getting our targets, because we know that there has to be a buildup. And so this startup target is a different number that we can default to when DEC is saying, hey, have the QUIS done anything? Well, yeah, we can say, well, we've met our startup target. Well, our applications in this first round don't quite make that startup target. Now, this is a weird year because we're near the end of the year and it's only one, but we'll do multiple rounds in the future. But we just wanted people to see that. I just won't belabor this too much longer, but you can see the blue bar is the cost effectiveness for the applications. And then the reference is that $11,000. So you can see overall that projects that are being applied cost more than this reference. Also, ideally people will have the calculator itself, the scoring prioritization calculator will be something that people will get. Anyway, want people to know that that's coming and will make the process more transparent. So the thing that I wanted to return to now is the projects themselves. And I'll summarize. Oh, Alair.
Thanks, Dean. That's really helpful and interesting to see how you've been breaking that out. Do you do that by, I'm assuming you're doing it by project as well. So when you're looking at that kind of comparison between the cost effectiveness, like I'm assuming some projects are more cost effective than others, and you're doing that same kind of calculation.
Yes. So yeah, I will get to that in a little bit, but yes, it's maybe someday the dashboard will be something where if you click a line, it will show us the cost effectiveness for that application. That's sort of like next generation. But today we will have some tables where you can see that information. Now it's not as clean as I would have liked, and we'll get it cleaner next time. But yeah, we are going to be talking about the cost effectiveness on an individual project level because that's an important part of the decision making. So there are 3 projects in the ID assessment realm. As I said, as a QUISP, we feel like they all have merit. When the thing that I didn't show last time for the earlier meeting is that all of those 3 projects were scored. So people may remember that the process for prioritizing these early stage projects is by necessity a different kind of softer process. It asks a bunch of questions and people provide a number. It doesn't add to 100, it totals 32. And so we've scored those applications that we'll talk about in a little bit. And we can see that out of a maximum number of 32, the range in scores was 22 to 28. But that doesn't really change our view as a QUISP. We feel like they all have merit and they could all be funded. And well, what are those projects? People with the organizations that submitted them can speak to them. I'm just gonna flash on the screen this slide that was in your package that has a description. MRBA has 2 of the applications. The Natural Resources Conservation District has 1 of them, and they're engagement type projects, early stage problem assessment type projects that set the stage for later work. The one of those projects submitted by the Conservation District looks at several sites in the Lake Carmi area. And then of the MRBA projects, 1 is in North Troy and 1 is near Sleeper Pond, Mud Creek area. The requests that we received, as I said, sorry, too many windows open. Well, I think what I would do is if there are any questions about the idea of acting on the projects as a group, I would field those. It's also possible that the group can vote on projects individually, and that will necessitate the sponsoring organization to recuse itself from the voting. And it could be handled either way. If there are particular questions people have about the projects, then maybe you can ask those and then the sponsor of the project can answer them. Lauren.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Yeah, I guess I just want to say if anybody has questions, let's talk about those first before we make any moves. But then a question to you, Dean. If Lindsay and I both have to recuse ourselves, do we have enough to vote on a project on all of them together?
So we have a spreadsheet set up. So if you are locked, so we have Barry, we have Beth, Alaire, we have Dan, and so you have Sarah. So yes, there are.
Okay.
Yes, there are enough votes if they were together.
Sure. Yeah, I guess, can you go back to the previous slide with the projects and then if anybody has any questions? Yeah,
I'd like a moment just to read the descriptions of the projects.
Sure. Beth, feel free to ask your question.
I was wondering if we come across the conflict of interest in the future, are we allowed to go to the alternates for voting? The answer is probably no, but I'm just throwing it out there just in case.
Yeah, great question. I'm gonna let Dean answer that. And the question is maybe, or the answer is maybe.
Yeah, so one of the things I can say is that I believe that this is gonna be changed in the future, but won't change quickly. You don't solve the problem if you have an applicant and then their alternate is with the same organization because they have the same conflict. It's not like we get
not those alternates, the other alternates.
Oh, so if the alternate is in the position where they are a voting member, so let's say so if you had a project and your alternate was from a town, not your organization, then they could step up and then they could vote because the town isn't your organization. If that's what you're asking.
I'm saying like in each category. So if let's say that Lauren and Lindsay are out and somebody, like maybe somebody else, maybe Ted is out too because of a project. So could my alternate, I don't have an alternate because we don't have the capacity, but could my alternate vote?
Not the way things are right now, because
Okay.
so yeah, this is an idea that was floated, and that is have the alternates not be with the same organization, which is going to help. But then, like you said, I don't know if DEC would ever allow an alternate to essentially be a floater. But if there was a way for an alternate to be a floater, they could go to wherever the gap is and they could fill it. And we're not there yet. So, this is raising questions like, could someone be an alternate in multiple categories? And maybe, there may be ways to find a backdoor solution to this, but it's not like I can say, oh, we have a gap and we're just going to take an alternate who's over here and put them in this other category because they're not the alternate for that category where the gap is being created. But in the future, I think the rules of the game will change and hopefully be more flexible. But Kent and Lauren?
Kent, can I just, before you go, can I just say, I just want to recognize that Allison's entered the meeting and someone's on the phone. Whoever's on the phone, could you say your name?
Hi, it's Parker from Friends Northern Lake Champlain.
Awesome. Thanks, Parker. Appreciate it. All right, go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, I almost lost my train of thought. At the meeting I was just at, my alternate is not a member of my watershed organization, but she is a part of a watershed organization at another basin. If you were part of any watershed organization, you were not allowed to vote. That won't happen here, correct?
So I think I followed. So something that I didn't describe as much this time as last time was who would have to recuse themselves. DEC has suggested in some written materials that if your organization has an application in, but the vote that's taking place is for somewhat other organizations, DEC was saying that they wanted everybody to recuse themselves because they were concerned about blocking this idea that, oh, you might be strategic and vote down your competitor's project so that you improve the chances of yours. It's just too up in the air, but right now, I think DEC will settle on things, but right now, what I think is going to happen is, perhaps with the exception of the early applications, is that the assessment, there will be individual votes on an application and only the applicant will be recusing themselves. That's what I think is going to happen here today, so that it won't be more than the applicant that recuses themselves. Because we're maybe risking exposure a little bit. DEC doesn't seem to know where it wants to land, but at one time they were taking an extremely cautious view. And I think that they're going to be backing away from that, particularly since we have enough money and there's no theoretical advantage to blocking. So for now, I think it's just going to be the applicant who recuses.
Thanks, Dean. Alaire, your hand came up and then going back down, but you're still off mute, so I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it seems like we can move ahead to consider the applications, since I think voting on them individually makes sense just as a practice, but also it's like, if we can, it seems like we're fine in terms of the number of people. So that the questions about the alternates are not really, we don't need to solve those today. Can we ask questions, since we have Lindsay and Lauren here, about those projects?
Yes, please do.
Just for interest. Okay. I am Lindsay. I think I would just be interested in hearing more about both of your projects. Like, what do you mean more specifically by facilitate public participation in the North Troy project? And then also, like, more specifics, what do you mean by engagement and coordination around the Mud Creek? Like, can you just talk a little more about those projects? The Mud Creek one, I'm just curious, like, where are you at with that project? Is this just like a very early stage, like trying to get landowners, just let them know that you're considering it, or just would love to hear a little more about both?
Sure. So the Sleepy Pond Dam, we are working on design right now. And so that's forging ahead. We have done a lot of the sort of pre-check-in. We have permission from the select board, it's a town-owned dam, they're on board, the adjacent landowners are on board, but we haven't done a lot of outreach to the rest of the town, and this will change. Removing that dam will change the look of the town and the opportunities for some town-owned land to be used differently. So that's primarily what we want to do during this design stage, is talk to people about, okay, instead of having a pond, you're going to have a nice stream bed, and your town-owned little parklet will become bigger. And what do you guys envision, and what else could go on? And there's actually a housing project that's going to be happening nearby. So just in general engagement and tying potential projects together, and helping the town figure out what their new landscape might look like. It is in the heart of downtown.
Cool. So is the project happening as far as you know? It's not like you need to get buy-in, but you're just more like, we want to engage people and be.
Yeah. The project will move forward, presuming we can find funding to implement at this stage, but we want to make sure that the town feels like they've had a chance to speak, and also engage in the opportunities that may come with restoration.
Nice. That's great.
The North Troy project is a massive opportunity. We've got a huge stretch of riverfront property that is potential for conservation. We've got some new landowners that are interested in conservation on 3 miles of river frontage, including Big Falls. And then there is 160 acres of town-owned land on the other side of the North Troy Dam. There's a large tract landowner that is interested in no longer being the owner of that land. And there's some conversations happening with Vermont River Conservancy relating to those parcels. And then the remaining parcels are pretty much owned by another farmer. So it's a great opportunity to say, let's look at this river corridor and figure out what the opportunities are. So the bringing together of people is creating sort of focus groups and talking to, again, the town about potentials and what they would envision, and how this might pair well with other potential revitalization projects for the town of North Troy, or the village of North Troy. Any other questions, Alaire?
No, I think that's it for me, but thank you. That's great. I mean, these all seem like great projects to me, all three.
Awesome. Thanks, Alaire. Questions from others on these? Oh, Jim, I see your hand.
Sorry, I'm just confused. Maybe this is more of a Dean question, but going back to the table that you were just showing, is the projected cost, I think, the column there, is that $5,995? How did we get such a specific amount? Not the
Lindsay,
total cost.
yeah. Lindsay, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, that's actually just my spreadsheet of like, this is how many hours I think my folks will need to do.
Okay.
I'll say that's true for ours also. It's just our billable rate times the number of hours we think it'll take.
Okay.
Oh, is it all staff time? I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
And travel.
Travel. Yeah. Great.
Thanks. Tom.
Maybe more of just a comment. We can't do enough of this stuff.
Yeah.
At least this early stage. And I mean, part of me sitting here saying, and I don't want to jump to the later stuff, but you know, we're challenged with high cost effectiveness projects, and we should spend as much money as we can on stuff like this. And I don't want to get into like we have to sell and market, but maybe we have to sell and market as a group to bring projects in, because we are so early stage. People still don't know what we're doing, who we are. We don't get a lot of public, if any, public participation. And so 1, we can't do enough of this. And 2, I think as a group, we need to figure out how to expand this and reach out to people and get more of this in. With that 7%, we've only spent like 10% of our 7%. We should take the rest of that money and get out there and sell this thing.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Tom.
We need
No,
more
no apologies.
staff to be able to do that, Tom.
I think this would be a good exploration for all of us to see how smoothly this process goes and then be able to plan for the expansion of it in the future, is how I'm viewing this. Yeah, thanks, Tom. With that too, I know, just circle back, not at this meeting, but maybe at the next meeting, we should talk about our public participation plan that has been drafted and is being reviewed. And I think that will really, doesn't necessarily capture marketing, but it captures some of those approaches that we might want to adopt. So, any other comments, questions, concerned on these 3 projects? All right, seeing none, I think the way I want to do this, and we can decide if this is a bad idea or not. We're just going to start with that project ID. Ooh, sorry, Dean. I can't see the numbers anymore. Thank you. For the project number 1924, presented by the Missisquoi River Basin Association. Lindsay White of the Missisquoi River Basin Association, who is a voting member, is not eligible to vote on this, as she will recuse herself. Do I hear a motion to approve this project?
Sarah Downs, I move that we approve this.
Thank you, Sarah. Here a second. Kent, I think I saw your hand up. Yeah,
Second.
great. Thank you, Kent. Any other abstentions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, I got Dan, Sarah, Alaire, Barry, Ted, Kent, and Beth, and Lauren. All those opposed? Seeing none, the project or the motion passes. Moving on. I will still say the words, but I will not vote on my own project if that works for folks. If anyone feels uncomfortable with that approach, let me know. I'll make Lindsay do it. For project ID 11350, presented by the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District. All right, thank you, David. David's heading out. For that project, Lauren Weston is recusing herself. Is there any, do I hear a motion to approve that project?
I move to approve it.
That was
Second.
Alaire, and Kent will second. Thank you very much. Any other abstentions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Sarah, Lindsay, Alaire, Barry, Ted, Kent, and Beth, and Dan. Thank you. All those opposed? Wonderful. Motion passes. All right, project 1657 from the Missisquoi River Basin Association. Lindsay White will be recusing herself. Do I hear a motion to approve this project?
I move that we
I second.
approve this project.
All right, Sarah moves, Alaire seconds. Thank you both. Any other abstentions? Seeing none. All those in favor? All right, Alaire, Sarah, Barry, Dan, Ted, Beth, Kent, Lauren. All those opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. Thank you all. Can't wait to report on them. Yes, Dan.
You're on mute.
Trying to figure out how to get rid of the hand.
Perfect.
This is
Um,
under
You
reaction.
got it.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. We've all been there.
Maybe that's easier.
All right. So moving on, I'll pass it back to Dean for an explanation of the design and implementation projects.
Thanks, Lauren. This is going to require a little bit of juggling, but hopefully not too much. There are 4 projects to consider. There's one from MRBA, one from Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, one from the Orleans County Conservation District, and one from the town of Montgomery. You can see a table here that has them in rank order based on the calculator that was developed to do this task. I think, yeah, this is what that calculator looks like. It should be familiar to some of you, but phosphorus reduction in one column, if they're one-time reductions, the total cost of the project, what is in this column here, which I've just inserted because I think it helps people understand. This is that dollars per kilogram that is potentially comparable to that $11,000 or $12,000 overall reference, if people want some idea of that. There's design life. There is the cost of operations and maintenance, which is turning into, it's a challenging area because it's going to mean that we develop ways to standardize costs, but these numbers are very soft. Anyway, they are what they are. Conformance with the basin plan and co-benefits. So that's what those, this is the spreadsheet that was used to produce the scores, the rank that you see. The scores range from 35 to 74 or 70, yeah, 36 to 74. And the order that you see them is in the table that I just provided here. The phosphorus reduction, if you just look at it in isolation, ranges from about 2 kilograms. It's for a final design project to almost 15 kilograms, and that's for the implementation. And that's a pretty good performance as these things go. The fact that 3 of the projects are implementation projects, I think, is pretty significant. And one is final design. We would be hesitant as a QUISP to fund, we are hesitant as a QUISP to fund implementation projects when the phosphorus performance is low. And that's something that is concerning about at least one of the projects. As I showed here, its phosphorus reduction is, it's just the cost of it is huge, unless, and as I said earlier, we're kind of stuck with the phosphorus calculations that DEC endorses. They have tools. Those tools will get better over time, but as those tools are applied to the one project, it doesn't fare well for that project's performance, and that shows up in the total score. Yes, I'm rambling at this point. The thing that I would suggest is that, yeah, you vote on them in rank order, and that the project for Montgomery is one where there would probably be some serious discussion because it doesn't come close to that 2 or 3 times the cost. Even if you look at it in the most, even if you look at the cost category of the most expensive type, it's still more than 2 times that cost. So it's a tough one to justify on that basis. I haven't said much about the specifics. I'm just gonna show I think I didn't do this before, did I? Right? No, so design and implementation projects. This is the Trout River project that hopefully people can address. This is on the near the boundary of Montgomery and Enosburg. This is the location of the Shipyard Road project in Highgate Springs that is being submitted by Friends of Northern Lake Champlain. Can answer questions about that one. This is the location, a couple or 3 spots here. This is the Orleans Natural Conservation District. Ted can answer questions about it. And this is the Black Falls Road. This is the Montgomery project. the application shows the location here. I just felt like it was a little bit tough to know where Black Falls Road was. This is showing Black Falls Road coming out of Montgomery here.
Dean, I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Beth. Yep.
Did we receive any of this in an email? I'm not finding it. I'm finding it really difficult to read any of that stuff.
Okay, yeah, this was in the packet. So
It was, okay.
yeah,
all right.
sorry. And yes, and as I was saying at the start of the meeting or earlier, when we get the dashboard or something like it out, then you will know that applications are submitted and all of the information will be there and you'll be able to click and read to your heart's content. But yes, this was in the meeting packet, unless there was a problem getting it.
I will go double check.
And so maybe a few words from the applicants about the project would be good.
Yeah, I think that would be great if people just want to do a quick little. If you want to say what it says on the page, I guess might be helpful. So Lindsay, I'll start with you.
Okay, our project is a bioengineered bank stabilization project that is directly downstream from a massive VTrans funded, eventually going to happen, more traditional bank stabilization project on Longley Bridge Road. This is downstream of where the road is being threatened. That's why VTrans is coming in, but it's below a spot. So the VTrans project will end at a successful 2010 stabilization project that just involved willow planting, basically benching back, but it worked in one spot, and then downstream there's continued erosion. So we have about 300 feet on either side of a small tributary that enters the trout that we would like to put in engineered log jams. We have the design finalized, and yeah, the landowner's on board. We'd hope to use locally harvested wood for those log jams. Any other questions? Any more details desired?
So the log jams are, the stabilization is needed just for road protection.
So this is just to reduce the amount of sediment entering. The road protection will be done with the upstream project. It's about 500 feet, I think, and currently has riprap on it, which is supposedly a temporary fix, but it was a temporary fix 3 or 4 years ago, I think. So we'll see what ends up happening with that VTrans project that has tripled in cost, I think, perhaps.
Wow. Thanks, Lindsay. I do just want to note for the record that Karen Bates is here. I don't know when you joined, Karen, but just for our minutes. Thanks for coming. Kent, would you like to describe your project?
Ken, would you like me to jump in?
Thank you. Go for it.
I
Perfect.
was a little
Allison.
late joining on. I needed to do an errand between meetings. So this project is located in Highgate Springs on Shipyard Road. It was identified in a shoreline assessment that our organization conducted last year that looked at the entire shoreline of Swanton and Highgate and identified 2 projects, one in each town, for a 30% design for stormwater and or lakeshore improvements. So this project specifically deals with a failing seawall. So currently, not only is the seawall at danger of collapsing and releasing a bunch of sediment, but at the moment, hardened lakeshore infrastructure like this, basically, instead of a living shoreline, a hard surface dissipates wave energy below and to the sides of the structure so that it actually erodes the lake bed and the surrounding shoreline. So unfortunately, the phosphorus calculator that is available at the moment does not accurately, there isn't a way for it to be able to show how much phosphorus reduction potential a project like this has. So I do have to say that our calculation is a very, very rough estimate. We do have pretty accurate estimates for the 2 rain gardens that will be on either side of this, the seawall practice. And essentially, so it's those 2 practices. And then the preliminary design proposes replacing this hard structure seawall with encapsulated soil lifts. And that will help reduce that lake bed scouring and also prevent the seawall from its ultimate failure, which could release a lot more sediment. That's the basics of it. And yeah, just wanted to make note that our phosphorus calculations are really rough estimates.
Thanks, Allison. Yeah, Alaire.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. That's helpful. I guess in general, I'm just wondering how we can even do a phosphorus calculation for a design project. And then when you go to do implementation, is it like can you partially apply it to the design and then later to the implementation? It feels like you can't do it at all. And then the implementation is where you really would apply it, because then you actually know what is being done. So I guess I would just say in addition to it being really difficult to use this process, the phosphorus application process, I just wonder if we can even use it for this kind of project, or if we need to make our decision based on something else.
Yeah,
Thanks,
the way
Alaire.
that we did it was, so we combined the calculations that we got for the 2 rain gardens with what is available to calculate a shoreland practice. So we were able to accurately say, you know, how long it is, how wide it is, but the recession rate is basically impossible to calculate because no, it's not currently receding, and it's hard to calculate what is being eroded underneath and on the sides of it. But it's that eventual failure that really has the biggest impact. So that's about all we can do at the moment.
Thanks, Allison. Dean, I don't know if you want to touch on Alaire's second part of that question, and Lindsay, I'll get to you after.
You were directing that to me, Lauren? I just want to.
Yeah, just whether or not we should even be bothering with trying to calculate phosphorus at the design stage.
So in a way, our hands are tied a bit by DEC's focus on using phosphorus reduction. So yeah, we're told we need to look at it. I said at the beginning, these numbers are soft numbers. Whether or not we would be able to, in the future, do 3 categories of application and have only the implementation category have phosphorus as a consideration, you know, maybe that's where we're headed, but we're not there now. And it's also one of those things where we do want to have some idea of what the phosphorus benefits will be as early as we can, so that we can encourage those projects that might have good phosphorus benefits. You know, we want to try to point people in the direction of those projects that are going to be the ones that do the most for the lake. But yeah, for now, we're using the calculator, and it's including for design projects. And that's the environment that we are in. But maybe in the future, there will be 3 categories, and we will only do it in a precise or hard way with the big dollars with implementation. But then some projects are design and implementation, which then would force some people that might want to do design and implementation to split their project in a way they weren't. So, you know, it's maybe possible, but short answer is we're looking at it for now.
Thanks, Dean. Lindsay.
So Allison, the number that you provided as annual phosphorus reduction is your expectation once implementation is completed.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the number that we were able to come to.
Right.
The
Right.
tools are available.
So using the overall reduction with your cost for design seems like it's not this is not really directed to you, Allison. This is more of a general process thing. Seems like it's pointless at this point because we have no idea how much this project will actually cost once it's implemented. So I think the splitting up that you're talking about, Dean, seems like obviously we want to know that the design project is going to have good phosphorus reduction value. So giving that number would be great, but then giving us that phosphorus reduction cost ratio just seems lying.
So there's a
So
lot of updating that will need to happen. It's another way of looking at it. You know, you put in a set of numbers to knowing that the next step will mean new numbers, updated numbers.
Right, but your ranking takes that into account. So your ranking is going to artificially inflate a design project, any design project, just because it doesn't incorporate the full cost of the project at this stage.
So I think there is one point of clarity here. It's the total expected cost of implementation, and it's the total P at implementation. And what Dean is actually using is a projected cost for the whole entire thing, not just for this phase.
Right.
Oh, that's a very cheap project, Allison.
Yes, which I think is still kind of lying, but lying in a different way. Thanks, Alaire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much we need to talk about it. It just feels like there's so many huge issues here. Like I would hate for this project to then have, like I have a project where the cost that we were anticipating during the design process was one thing. And then when we actually went through final design, it was like 5 times more, ended up being 5 times more. So I think it's just really difficult with these kinds of projects to anticipate what they could be. Well, with any project, but I'm not familiar with seawall work. Maybe that's really easy to say. If we do this, it'll have this. This is how much it costs. But yeah, I just think there's so many unknowns. That's why you go through design, and it seems like there's a risk of in the future this project could be at a disadvantage if it ends up costing more, and then they've already used the phosphorus credit. Like it doesn't make sense to me like at all. I mean, I think I support the project, but the phosphorus piece is really, it's like almost. Yeah, like you said, Lindsay, like lying or just like fantasy in some way.
Yeah, thanks, Alaire. And then Lindsay, I saw you came back and you went away. Okay, you're good. All right, any other questions for Allison about this project? Maybe we can circle back later to process. All right, hearing none. Thanks, Allison. Ted, would you like to talk about your project?
Sure. These 3 culverts on Taft Brook, actually a tributary to Taft Brook, are in the town of Westfield in the upper Missisquoi. And we selected these 3 as a kind of a package deal because they were all within half a kilometer of one another. Town of Westfield had 3 more other culverts that they had more or less prioritized, but this was the cheaper option of culverts because some of these were going under state routes. And these were more on municipality roads in an area that actually these are only the pipes that are coming out of here are pretty small compared to the bankable width. Not to shoot my own project down, but was looking at the numbers, and I have my annual P reduction is based on the removal of those 3 culverts, and the total cost project here is for one of those culverts. And when I put these numbers together, the numbers were based on 2021 projections, and obviously since then things have gone up considerably.
Okay, so just to clarify, the total project cost is not correct.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for being transparent about that. That's very
Yeah.
kind of you.
I was looking at the numbers as we were going through, and seeing other people's information laid out here really helps me understand the process rather than seeing it in isolation.
Sure.
And yeah, I think culvert crossings are a hard sell now. They're heavy on the cost and low on immediate holistic benefits. I mean, there are benefits to improving those, but it's becoming a tougher sell with the way the costs are going up. The advantage is that the town of Westfield has in-kind where they're actually going to remove, once we could get to the actual breaking ground, they're going to remove and recycle those culverts into other places that could use them. So that was a really nice feature of this project.
Thanks, Ted. I think Dean might want to respond to something, and then I'll get to you, Alaire.
Well, I was just going to ask, is it, so it's essentially 1/3 of the total it should be?
Yeah, yep.
Thanks. Alaire.
What's the replacement structure? Is it a larger culvert or is this?
It's a box. It's an open bottom box culvert.
Okay.
Yep.
Ted, I'm curious how you did calculate the phosphorus reduction.
I was just looking at it was based on those 3 culverts.
Sorry, but like, was it just using the DEC calculator
Yep.
or? Okay.
Yep.
This is my own. This is just, I'm gonna nerd out. I apologize. And I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this, but does the DEC calculator take into account, like, should there also be an additional amount credited based on the FFI tool eventually? I'm just thinking about, are we really capturing the true impact of a passable structure?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting conversation to have as the FFI gets more and more detailed and then gets flushed out and actually goes through some real life testing.
Yeah.
I think that remains to be seen at the moment. I'm very curious about that, the utility of that tool, which holds a lot of promise.
Right.
I can add to that. It's Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
So I do understand from Stacy that the FFI tool will add some more phosphorus if the stream itself is not in geomorphic equilibrium. So if you know the stream is a little out of whack, and this is going to help sort of, work towards conformance with geomorphic condition, then you'll get more points.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of nuance in that with those structures. Like, how much is it a grading on one end versus erosion on the other end, and what that looks like. I've had the same conversation with Stacy out in the field looking at these culverts.
Awesome. All right, so Dean, I don't know if it's possible for you to run a quick recalculation or if.
Yeah, I can do that.
That'd be great.
Thanks. And in the time in between there, I don't think we have anyone from the town of Montgomery here to speak on the last culvert. Dean, I don't know if you want to speak to it or if anyone else has information. I have like a little bit of information on this project, but I was not involved in the submission of this application.
Yeah, I wasn't either. We tried to split the house. I would say that just overall, it's a project of a comparable type to what Ted was talking about on the other side of the mountain.
Awesome. Ted, do you mind? We can hear Sarah in the background. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, Dean, if you want to go ahead and run those calculations, I think we can all wait. But if anyone has questions for Lindsay, Kent, or Ted, please ask those now. Right. Seeing none, I almost want to pose a question to the group. That I don't know if I'm allowed to pose, but culverts. I think it's kind of like we open the door or we don't. And that's a discussion we probably should have. Okay, thanks, Dean. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just, I took the number that was offered before, and I multiplied it by 3, and it brought the costs up, substantially. This is that. This is
Cost
the
per
number that we
kilogram.
could possibly compare to the overall basin-wide number. So, yeah. So if we use a little less than 1.1 million, that's going to lower the score.
And I guess in that case, I know you'd shown previously a table of how much money we have this year and how much money projects applied for. And I think this now pushes us over that, what we have available. So we do actually have to prioritize.
It does. Right. It does mean that we have more requests than is available.
Okay.
And I would say that that this change puts those 2 projects in the same basket, which is they are, questionable in terms of their phosphorus cost effectiveness.
Noted. Kent, go ahead.
Our organization is trying to get better educated about the municipal roads permitting and what's being done there. We've had a couple projects that were on municipal roads, beside municipal roads, and we need more education. We've already reached out to Bethany to get that information. So this may be an uneducated question, but I'm wondering about this project and the one in Montgomery. Where do they come in regards to what the town is already being assigned to doing on the road inventory?
Thanks, Kent. I wonder, Jim, do you by chance want to speak up to that?
No,
Okay.
I'm a little out of it.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know that anyone, or Karen, do you know?
I think for the most part, a culvert that passes a stream is not something that's addressed in the MRGP. They focus on drainage culverts that are draining something other than a river, but I don't know that for sure.
If I can echo that, it's my understanding, and I'm getting into the deep end of the pool, that the MRGP would not require the upgrading of that culvert. So it isn't subject to the MRGP.
All right, thanks everybody. Kent, we can try to get some more answers though. Maybe that can be at our next work meeting. We have a discussion about that.
I could add though, sorry, I could add though that if the culvert itself needs to be replaced, they will be required to replace it so it meets probably the conditions that the proposed project would meet. So it really only makes sense to replace culverts that aren't going to be replaced for a long time by the town.
Thanks, Karen. And just I'll later post it in the chat. What is the acronym? And it's MRGP. It's the Municipal Roads General Permit. Thanks, everybody. Tom.
Dean, just two hopefully quick questions. When does the money have to be spent? And can a project be co-funded into effectiveness?
Dean, you are muted.
We can carry the money over. So we can carry the money over. It doesn't go away this year. It just will become more and more complicated as time goes by to keep it on the book and having to spend old dollars first. But it's doable to carry money over. In theory, it could go away if the law changes after 3 or 4 years or something. But we can carry it over. And then the second question was.
Can a project be co-funded into effectiveness?
Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, that's something that we've had internal discussions about. And if a project doesn't get funding now, one of the conversations that we have had is to go to the applicant and say, can you find other dollars that you can apply and have those dollars be such that no one else can claim the phosphorus credit? Because if the dollars were coming out of the town's pocket, let's say, and no one else was getting the phosphorus credit, then we might be able to put more phosphorus credit on fewer dollars and improve its position. We haven't worked all that out, but it's the place that we see some daylight potentially. So that's, I think the short answer to your question is yes, we think that might work, and that might be a way where we would fund a project at less than 100%, but it's, yeah, it needs to be developed.
Does anybody know, does like Lake Champlain Basin program have a phosphorus credit?
So some of it does. So there is a complication between money that goes to Lake Champlain Basin program and Quist money. And I guess I'll just leave it at that we can, yeah, it does get a little complicated.
So Dean, are you saying that you might reduce the total project cost by the amount that came from another source? So sort of the requested amount, not the total project cost?
We're trying to find some way that maybe if this is driven by phosphorus and phosphorus cost effectiveness, if there is off the table money that could be applied, we would like to be trying to do that. But it's going to have to, for some of these projects though, remember, it's going to have to be substantial because some of these projects still don't have relatively good. I mean, if we cut the costs in half, they might still be pretty low cost effectiveness. But that's the idea, is that we could perhaps improve their picture if we don't have to count all of the costs, and the costs are going to be picked up. And we want to, we don't want to lock up money for a project that doesn't have the rest of the funding available, right? We want to know that other funding is available and get the project done.
All right, Ted.
Yeah, so this is a good conversation because I've been putting in for 6 other grant funding for this particular suite of culverts. So I'm not depending on the Quist money to cover this whole thing. But what I've been doing in my mind is thinking about, well, what if I get enough money to do one of these culverts? And I just did the phosphorus calculator to look at what one culvert would look like that has the biggest bang for your buck, that would open up the most amount of acres restored, so to speak. And that might be a more realistic way to think about it. And that I was trying to package these as a whole. I was going to, for bipartisan law, infrastructure dollars, the Lake Champlain Basin, even places like the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture, because that would include Fish Passage as part of this. So yeah, I've been, I guess, walking the beat, so to speak, with all available funding. So when I think about the total cost, but I understand, I think I just grasped onto what you're saying, Dean, as you're looking at, does this project really reduce the amount of phosphorus we're seeing, regardless of how much money you're allotting to this, right? You're looking at the overall cost per phosphorus reduction ratio, correct?
Yeah, for now, and if we learn that there are important projects that could be done and there's a way of accounting for them differently, and it moves them into this place where we could defend the cost effectiveness ratio, basically. If we can do that, let's do it. But right now, we don't think or there.
Sure. Just for curiosity's sake, could you just put in the phosphorus for one culvert, the output value is 3.6 for one culvert. And let's see, that's the annual reduction. Oh, annual reduction, sorry, is 1.63. I was looking at the other one. The any one time is 3.6.
And that's back to being $360,000.
Yep, correct. Yeah, that's okay. That puts me in the same ballpark. Yep, that's what I thought.
Great discussion, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dean. It's nice to see this calculator up there and thinking about this. And I do think culverts are a hard sell. I'll admit it right up front.
Thanks, Ted. I do want to ask Dean quickly, Sarah has to leave at 1. And if one more person has to recuse themselves, do we still have a quorum?
So if we're voting on things individually,
Yes.
So Sarah would be out. So we still have Dan there.
Yes.
Yeah, we have enough if it's only going to be the applicant recusing themselves. So yeah, we would be fine.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's good.
So yes, Alaire.
I think in the spirit of like thinking about culverts as a bigger topic, would just like to make a request for a future session as part in our group in particular. And I know I need this information, and maybe others do as well, or some part of it, but I think it would be helpful for us all to hear it together. Just about culverts, like who is responsible for what types of culverts. You know, my understanding is like it's a state highway, it's V-Trans, if it's, and I'm not sure with the local, well, like with these, it sounds like V-Trans is not involved. I just don't know. A lot of I work on culvert projects at the Land Trust, but they're like privately owned, like farm or forest road culverts. And so when it gets into like town and state and dirt roads, and I would just love to hear like the landscape of kind of who's responsible, what are the funding sources, when, you know, Karen, you mentioned culverts are, you know, they're coming up for replacement at different times. I know when they are scheduled for replacement, they need to be replaced with a appropriately sized structure that allows for aquatic organism passage and so forth. So hearing that point, and it just feels like we as a group could benefit from more information about this. And also then we could potentially have questions for applicants on culvert projects about those things. Because I know for me, love appropriately sized culverts. I want to have them everywhere. And I would just want to make sure that applicants have like explored every other option, if there are other options. If the town, you know, Ted, I appreciated you saying about the town of Orleans, or wait, town of Troy, being part of the project in some way, or like volunteering to do some of the work. I just would want to hear information about that so we could know if we are like making a decision in kind of what context we're making a decision in. Have the applicants explored every other option? Is there buy-in from the road, whatever road agency or municipality is responsible for that kind of work? So it's just a more general request, because I don't feel totally able to like decide whether I support the QUISP funding these culvert projects today, although I think that they're very valuable projects.
Thanks, Alaire. Yeah, Sarah.
I'm with Alaire. I really feel like for the amount of money and the minimal phosphorus reduction, I'm a little nervous of throwing all our money towards those two projects at this point, with all unknowns that both Ted and Alaire brought up. where I'm really supportive of the other two projects, and I might be of the culvert, but it really concerned me if on the next round, we're gonna have projects that are gonna really do much more reduction of our phosphorus. And sorry, I have to leave, but I had said that when we set the meeting up.
Thanks, Sarah. Lindsay, you had had the clapping hand emoji at one point. I didn't know if you meant that to be a hand raise.
Nope, just
No,
supporting
okay.
Alaire saying.
Great.
Yes.
Great, appreciate that. So what to do? It sounds like we would all appreciate some more information about culverts. And so I guess my thinking is if we can arrange something for that for the next meeting, and then potentially also have a re-review of these projects at that next meeting. Once we have some of our questions answered, and invite both applicants to that meeting as well.
A re-review of the two.
Yes. Am I reading the room correctly? Yes, Kent.
I was wondering if DEC could provide us with some references, some reading materials prior to the meeting, so I could get up to speed. I think this will dovetail pretty well with this meeting that we're going to have with Bethany. But the more information we have, the better.
Sure.
So Ken, just so I understand, the information from DEC that would be most helpful for you is about funding or about phosphorus calculations or something else?
Phosphorus calculations, and of course this relates back to the previous meeting and the meeting we're going to have coming up a week from today.
Got it.
All right, so.
Dean, it might make sense to share some of the Hoyle Tanner report, the final report on cost efficiency with members. You know which report I'm referring to?
Yes, I believe I never got it through official channels, but I think I managed to stumble across it and find it. So yes, I hadn't thought about it in a while, but I believe I have a copy, and I'm going to make a note to locate it.
Okay, if you can't, I can send you a copy.
Well, that would be even better.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim. So here's what I think we're gonna do. I think we're gonna vote on the first two projects. And then I think we're gonna table the other two to a next meeting where we can get more information before making an informed decision on those two. We're not saying yes or no to the second two at this time. Can I get a general head nod if that works? Okay, Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, I would probably say let's have some sideboards on that culvert discussion, and probably put together some specific questions. What we want to discuss, because when I start playing with the calculator on all arbitrarily thinking about any culverts and putting the range of costs in there, those piece phosphorus that P reduction is always going to be low.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Ted. I think also it probably makes sense, Dean, if we could get Stacy to chat a little bit about the FFI and what if that could add on meaningful P. Okay, I see head nods. All right, and I also saw head nods before of this approach. So unless someone else has something to say, I will make a motion. All right. So we are going to vote. I make a motion, or sorry, do I hear a motion to approve project number 11352 from the Missisquoi River Basin Association for funding, and Lindsay White will recuse herself from this vote. So do I hear a motion? Kent, I see your hand up.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alaire. All those in favor, or sorry, any other abstentions? I apologize. Seeing none. All in favor? Dan, Alaire, Ted, Kent, Beth, Barry, Lauren. Those opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. All right. For the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain's project number 11054. With the understanding that Kent, Kent, your hand is up.
I was going to officially recuse myself from this vote. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Kent. All those, any other abstentions? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, hands up. All right, I see Dan, Alaire, Barry, Lindsay, Ted, Beth, Lauren. Those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Congratulations. And do I hear a motion to postpone voting on Orleans County Project 11323 and Town of Montgomery Project 11360 to our next quick meeting following additional information gathering that we will discuss after the vote?
Yeah, I'll move.
All right, Ted so moves, and a second. Second. I'm actually gonna say Ted can't make that motion. I apologize. Alaire, do you want to first it and then can I have someone else second it?
Yep. Lindsay, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other abstentions besides Ted? One forcing to abstain. Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please raise. All right. Alaire, Dan, Kent, Beth, Barry, Lindsay, Lauren. All those opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. All right. I do just want to, maybe we could take 5 minutes. I think we have some of the good questions marked down, but are there any other questions we want to make sure we have answers to make an informed decision at the next meeting? So I think we discussed, we want to know whose responsibility are culverts. Sorry, Tom, you had your hand up, go ahead.
Nope, on this topic, I dropped my hand. I thought you were gonna kind of open up to more general.
I will come back to you. Barry.
We're talking about bringing up their requests at the next meeting. We may want to have some kind of language about giving them the opportunity to resubmit or change their proposals or reapply.
Excellent point. I have no idea how that would work, Dean. What do you think?
I don't have a strong negative reaction. Yeah, I think the thing that concerns me only is that if someone felt like, oh, they're getting a second bite at the apple, but everyone else has been funded. So everyone has met the original call for projects and they're in the game. So I don't think anybody could feel like they're being disadvantaged. They will have the chance to submit at the next one. So I'm thinking it's okay. I don't know whether there would be a line that would be so far of a revision where I would somehow say that's objectionable, but on the surface, I don't think it's bad. I just don't know what, yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for the applicant. I don't know how they would change it, but maybe if an applicant said, here, I have found another 60% of the cost, and so they resubmit with it reduced, then we would just need to be sure that there's no one else that's going to create the credit and whether or not it's going to pass muster with DEC. But I wouldn't say don't do it if you have an idea.
Okay.
I just have a quick question. So are we inviting new submissions for the next meeting, I guess is the question. And if we are, or is that deadline closed and we do not have another deadline or a rolling deadline?
Okay. This is just a continuation of the current call for applications, is how I see it. Now, there is a separate question that is, when do we have a second call for applications? And that is something that we can discuss that's not tied to the first.
I remember early on we had a discussion of a rolling deadline because we wanted a chance to get people rolling as soon as possible and get money out the door. So I know we don't necessarily have a rolling deadline. My only question was that if we were going to have an additional, this is to the second bite of the apple issue. If other people were invited to submit, then these two would be kind of essentially, we're not taking action on these. The group decided not to vote on these, and essentially they're invited to resubmit new applications and potentially compete against new other projects in another round. So that's why I asked the question about whether we were going to be inviting new applications.
Well, if I can interject, I think it all comes down to how frequently do you want to meet? Because the idea of rolling applications, it sounds appealing on one level, but if the group is meeting, if the councils are really meant to meet quarterly, rolling applications basically means we'll be doing this 4 times a year. There's going to have to be a deadline prior to a meeting so that we can do the scoring and it can present it to the council. So it's going to be more or less quarterly. So when does the group want to meet next to talk about these two? And could there be, if it's so far into the future that we could get the notification out to have another call of applications, but we still need to send out the call for applications and then give people a deadline so that they know that, oh, I've got another shot at this. We can't just assume people will send them in. We have to signal that there's an opportunity to do it.
Thanks, Dean. Alaire, is your comment on this topic, or yes, go ahead, Alaire.
I know I have missed the last 2 meetings, so I don't know if it does soon. It doesn't sound like it has, just from hearing the last 2, the Dean and Barry talking. I had thought that we did not decide to do a rolling kind of submission situation, but more like quarterly, every couple months kind of thing. So not like once a year, but every 2-3 months. And that every 3 months is consistent with our meeting schedule. And so it feels like we need to decide on these before there's another round announced. And that feels like something like, when is our next regular quarterly meeting scheduled? Can we just do this at that, or do we need to have another special meeting?
The next regular meeting, this is a special one, right? So it's going to be
May 3rd.
May 3rd. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'd be in support of either having another special meeting where we get information, get our questions answered, and then vote on these, or waiting until the May 3rd meeting, getting information and voting at that time. Or there's another option, is like, if there's information out there that's already has been created and packaged in the way that we need it, like maybe we're not the first people to have these questions about culverts and responsibility. I'd be surprised if we were, actually. Maybe there's like a webinar or something that we could all watch, and that could be like a required homework, and then we come back together for another 1-hour meeting before May 3rd to vote on these 2 projects. I don't know if that's helpful. Lots of options, but I would say we shouldn't have another round of applications open before that next meeting, unless we've already decided on these.
Thanks, Alaire. Other thoughts? Okay, I guess I'm personally in a similar boat as folks who have spoken, especially because if we were to open another round at the same time as we're asking for clarity on these questions, like the pool of money might be gone with these two projects already for this year. I think my next thought, yeah, sorry, Barry, go ahead.
I wasn't suggesting that they were forcing another round and forcing these two to compete. I just wanted us to kind of be clear on process.
Yes, thank you. I guess my thought would be the time between now and May 3rd is about a month. So maybe it makes sense to not try to squeeze in another meeting beforehand and give ourselves time to really get the answers that we need and have time to review that information thoroughly. So I guess my idea would be, let's make the May 3rd meeting the culvert meeting. And if people need to change their applications, maybe Dean, they can just work with you to address that for these two projects based on kind of either if we hear feedback from Stacy that there should be more P credits for FFI on these projects, or if the costs maybe were not accurately reflected. Okay.
Lauren, I also say that it seems like, now I don't have the directions or guidance in front of me, but the co-benefits seem like they're greater in these projects than well, at least in the Montgomery one, than is reflected in the scoring. So I don't know why that's so low given the stream access to the upper watershed, but it just seems like they could be scored better.
Noted.
Scores.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, maybe Dean, that might be something you could address with the applicants.
I will mention it to them.
Thank you. All right. So do I hear a motion to make the May 3rd meeting, a regularly scheduled May 3rd meeting, focus on these two culvert projects and review of applications of these two projects, including any changes that may need to be made to them? Thank you, Dan. We'll hear a second.
Lindsay, I'll second that.
Thank you. Abstention is Ted. Any other abstentions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please put your hand up. Dan, Alaire, Kent, Barry, Lindsay, Beth, Lauren. All those opposed? Seeing none. Motion carries. Thank you all. Great. So yeah, I think if we can get some information out and then see if there's any additional remaining questions before that meeting, that would be great. Tom.
Thank you. Dean, an exaggeration question, just to make a point, but our target is 145 kilograms. And if we brought 145 very cost-effective 1 kilogram projects to the table, would it be difficult to administer?
Dean, you are muted.
Yeah, for obvious reasons, it would be easier to do fewer that have the same benefit. But one of the reasons we adopted this platform that I mentioned is that we anticipated having to administer a lot of projects. And so it's with that goal in mind. So I don't think that we have to, we might be administering 145 projects at some point 3 or 4 years from now anyway. So I wouldn't discourage number.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
no,
bunts and signals are good if we get a lot of them.
Okay, because they're even in the last meetings, other meetings I've been at, people get drawn to these like 30 kilogram projects, but maybe they're not as cost effective. And I know from experience, I don't want to tout this, but like I sell a product that you hold in your hand, and it's reduced like 365 kilotons of carbon emissions over the last 10 years. And so you don't want to ignore those. But that was a good answer.
Yeah, the thing that, there are certain types of projects that fare well in the system that we have. And, like this, for some people that were in the earlier meeting, this strategic woody addition type project is a project that doesn't cost a lot of money and has a big benefit. And those projects, if we could do a lot of them, we would make good progress towards our goal. And so it's really, it's doing lots of little good things as well as learning what kinds of projects are good performers and emphasizing those as much as we can.
All right, thanks, folks. And so I think based on what we just voted on, the next regularly scheduled meeting after the May 3rd meeting is in another, I don't know when it is.
July 5th.
July 5th. So for planning purposes, that's technically a new fiscal year. Is that our annual meeting? And is that when someone else becomes chair?
It's when it is the annual meeting and it's when the vote takes place, but I can't predict if the vote will have a different result,
Noted.
We also talked about having at least one meeting a year in person.
Yeah.
We did. Just to raise the point, did you say July 5th? Okay.
That's the current placeholder.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good date to hold a very important meeting, but that can be a discussion for a later time. Yes, Alaire.
So if we are going to vote on these two projects in a more informed way on May 3rd, is that still, would that, like Ted, if we voted yes, would you still be able to like get the project going this year? Like how does that mess with your planning?
That's the $1 million question. It depends. It's going to greatly depend on those other funding sources coming through. I already got the nod from the Lake Champlain Basin program for a 2024, as well as the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture, and as well as a watershed grant through the state. So it would be 2024. It wouldn't be breaking ground this year.
Okay. So this decision isn't like a make or break for something that, okay.
Nope.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, I know this is a hard sell. Having worked around culverts before, I appreciate this conversation a lot.
For sure.
Thanks,
Yeah, and I
Ted.
know, like, we've had this conversation in the group before, just about wanting to make sure that our decisions and our grant rounds and things are like timed with thoughtfulness around the project work season. So just wanted to reintroduce that as a concept.
Thanks, Alaire.
Yeah.
And that actually reminds me, Dean, could you make sure that someone from Montgomery could attend the May 3rd meeting? And if that's not possible, we should find a different time.
It's on my list. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, great work, guys. We're doing great. I'm proud of us. So in theory, that July 5th date to be determined meeting may also be when we discuss another round of projects, if we're trying to do quarterly rounds.
Yeah.
Okay. Just tossing that out there for everybody to think about. We do also need to talk about the public participation plan at a future meeting too. I don't know when that will fit, but that needs to happen. All right. With the last 9 minutes, we do have something else on the agenda that I'm scrolling up to. It was scheduled a call for applications. Dean, do you have a thought on like when you'd want to reopen applications?
Well, I want to try to give myself more time for between the deadline. Well, I'm affected a little bit because we had the Lamoille come in, and so it's really not going to be that different from what happened here. But I want to get it. I want to get the document in some form soon. We provided 6 weeks between the announcement and the deadline. I don't think we have to provide quite that much, but we still don't want to compress it too much because of the need for people to see resource people. So it's coming up soon. Working back, so 1 week ahead of, if we assume that the meeting is, July 10th, let's say, we're looking at a deadline announcing in mid to late April with a deadline in end of May. Or early June.
So how do we announce in mid-April if we haven't made a decision on these projects until May?
It's a different pool of money in July.
Yeah, I don't think there's any conflict with getting the announcement out, because the announcement it just announces the opportunity. Good question.
I don't know how others feel about this, but I almost wonder if we can just always have the application open so people have access to it, and maybe you can do like a pitch for it 6 weeks out. But I think just having that application open so people have access to what information you're looking for could be really helpful. Especially with that project screening tool, making sure that that's just always available, of like, what regulators today do I need to talk to? Oh, also reminds me, if people didn't attend the historic preservation meeting, there's a new requirement. So make sure you are aware of that and watch that training. I don't remember what the first part of my statement was about. Oh, leaving it open if possible.
Yeah, and there will be improvements, things like ability to save partway through. There are some things that we need to address before we put the next one out, but I think that, yeah, there shouldn't be technical obstacles to doing what you're saying. It may not be it might not be the exact same application, but there will be an application that people could be able to use.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's possible.
Thank you. And yes, please do take a look at that historic preservation note. It's basically, you gotta check in a lot unless you're exempt or conditionally exempt. So that will change things, and we should also have a discussion about how that's going to affect cost at a future date. Not today. All right. The last thing was updates. I guess, actually, I almost wonder, do we want to change the July 5th date right now? I see a head nod.
Good with me.
Okay. Can folks pull open their calendar? That seems like a better use of time than general updates.
Just push it to the next week, 12th.
See a no from Dan.
I didn't hear that date. What was it?
That was July 12th was the proposal. But it was a head shake up and no. I also, Dean, just for the record, request for resending out the information on the historic preservation training.
Sending out the link again for that, because it was in the email that sent yesterday. Okay, I can send
You
that.
can send it again. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
So not looking at the 12th, but another day that week, or trying the next week.
How does the 13th? Nope. Dana, you're just away that whole week. You're just away that whole week. Okay. What about the 19th of July? No for Dan also. Are you out that whole week, Dan? No, just not that Wednesday. Okay. What about the 20th? Is that a no also?
Months when you're
Dan, when
wearing you
can you
around,
meet?
Dan. In July, and we could go different days too, but
Any, could you move it up into June? Go the other way?
We could, but it would mean that it's not going to take care of the vote, because the vote's supposed to happen in the fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically all of July bad for you, Dan?
No,
Okay.
the 26th would work.
and in turn, I don't know if anyone else was the week of July 5th. I mean, I'm around the end of that week, just not that day. So Thursday or Friday works for me. But
And are you around the 6th or the 7th?
Probably not, no.
Okay.
The 6th, yeah.
All right,
6th to the 16th, I'm gone, and then the 19th and 20th are gone.
it's also fine if everyone else is available on a certain day. One of us, we don't all have to be there. That's why we have alternates.
Right.
It
So I
might
guess I'm
be alternative.
You can Zoom from Europe.
That's true. I could,
I'm just recognizing I missed 2 meetings, the last 2 meetings because of school vacation stuff. And so, and I'm fine missing another one. I don't want to like be the absentee member. Somebody's fine.
yeah, I could probably do Zoom on the 12th. Yes, I could.
Zoom on the 12th.
Yeah, I'll be Zooming from Europe, but hey.
Oh.
And if you want your
Okay,
alternate to
you
come
don't
instead,
have
Dan,
to.
you're more than welcome to do
Yeah,
that.
you don't need to like Zoom from vacation. Like that's not,
Yeah.
do not do that, please.
Jake won't be sugaring them.
Yeah.
All right, the 12th we usually meet at 9. I feel like we usually meet at 9.
I would have to be 10:30 or later that day. I think we're
Okay,
at, yeah.
How about 11 to 1? I see
Great.
thumbs up. Any hard no's? All right.
So that would be
Yeah, just get your
5.
alternate to come.
Yeah,
Don't
don't
worry.
come
That's
from
fine.
vacation, like, please.
That would work. That would work.
All right.
Don't want to set that precedent with anyone.
Dean, does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everyone. And we're even done on time. Who would have thunk? Thank you. Yes.
I'm gonna
So just
motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn sounds great. Lindsay firsted. Who wants to second?
Second.
Okay, Alaire seconds. Any abstentions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Kent, Dan, Ted, Lindsay, Barry, Beth, Alaire, Lauren, all those opposed? Seeing none. Great meeting. Thanks, everyone. Dean will be in touch with everyone, I imagine.
Take care.
Gang.
See you
Thanks,
later.
guys.